So welcome everybody. In this session, we are going to be talking to recruiter Luke Rodwell, and this is part of our Recruiter Talk series. So Luke, his website is talentfocus.co.uk, and Luke specialises in executive recruitment. So I have a few questions for you, but before I get going with those, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks, Paula. Yes, delighted to be with you today. So I've been in recruitment for coming up to 20 years. Started off in an agency world with a global recruiter, and then moved into executive search with a firm in Scotland, where I was there for 7 years. And then for the last 10 years, I've had my own boutique executive search business, which is very much helping SMEs, larger organizations with their management and executive recruitment. No specialism in terms of sector or discipline, just building long relationships with our clients.
Brilliant, brilliant. So there's one thing that I will say to the viewers. Luke is talking about the way that he works. It's not to say that this is how all recruiters work. But so thinking about yourself and the way that you like to work, do you like it if people approach you? Do you like to just find people yourself? What's the best way of getting noticed by Luke Rodwell?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because executive search tends to work more with going out and finding clients, having that long-term relationship with them, repeat business referrals through them, and then generally going out and finding the candidates. Whereas perhaps some of the sort of mainstream recruitment agencies that you may have heard of, they tend to try and find candidates and send them out to various clients. So we generally, executive search myself, generally go out to find candidates when we have a particular role for them, particularly when, like myself, we don't specialize in any area, so we don't need to necessarily have lots of finance directors and build a relationship with them because we may be recruiting marketing directors or chief executives. So it's a difficult one to manage the balance between keeping in touch with candidates and giving them a good service, but also being mindful that our focus is on the client, I should say, client's requirements.
Mm-hmm. So how do we get noticed by you then?
So number one, I guess it's already being in the network. You know, people that we know, have worked with in the past, who've stayed in touch. They're always the ones that are going to stand out from the crowd. At the moment in this current market, you can reasonably expect that 500 plus applicants for pretty much any role, particularly if that role is advertised online. And so that's very difficult to come out and stand out when there's so many people applying for individual roles. So if it's a name that we've seen before, or it's somebody we've worked with before, or someone that's in the network, then they definitely would stand out more than others. But failing that, then the standard, clearly a well-written CV is going to help. And when I say well-written, and we'll no doubt come on to some CV sort of tips, but I mean sort of role-specific CVs. Quite often they're very much generic and they're not tailored for the particular role that we're recruiting or others are recruiting. And therefore they don't stand out as much as others. So it may be that individuals need to have more than one CV or tailor their CV specifically for that role so that they do stand out more. And then a covering letter, I think, is becoming more important than perhaps in the past. And again, when you're in competition, anything you can do to differentiate yourself helps. So if your covering letter is tailored and well written and supportive and maybe answers any questions that your CV may pose, gaps or transferable skills, then I think that's supportive. And you'd be surprised, Paula, how many covering letters I get which even reference the wrong company or the wrong name. It's just been recycled and it's a generic covering letter and it doesn't add any value. So I think covering letters are important, but only if they're written specifically for the role in mind and to the person in mind that you're actually sending it to, and not just a generic one. Another way to stand out is to be recommended by somebody in the recruiters network. So certainly if I post a job or something on LinkedIn and one of my network says, oh, you should speak to X, I will follow up with that. I will approach them, ask them for their CV and explore that further, because someone in the network has taken the time to help, then at least I can do is follow up on that. So if you can get someone to refer within the recruiters network, then that definitely helps. And then if you're able to follow up any application, whether or not this is direct to companies or to recruiters, you're able to follow up with a personalized LinkedIn message. I think that helps as well. Just to say, I've recently applied for this role. It'd be good to be connected with you. I hope I've answered all the questions in my CV, but if not, delighted to provide further information. So not a salesy, not pushy, but just professional follow up, and that does stand out, I think.
I'm glad you mentioned LinkedIn, because today, I mean, LinkedIn, it feels as though it's pretty important in any job search. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in addition to a CV, excuse me, I think a strong LinkedIn profile is critical. Anybody that's doing any research or remotely interested in you from perhaps your CV will look at your LinkedIn profile and go, does it all add up? Does it link with your CV? Whatever additional information have you provided on your LinkedIn profile? So I think in addition to having a great CV, a strong LinkedIn profile, having keywords in that profile to help people find you. So if you're immediately available, say words like looking, available, seeking, hashtag open to work, that will make it easier for people to find you. If you haven't put any of that in, and if people feel you're still in a job, they'll be maybe less inclined to approach you for an interim role. So I think it's an important part of your whole sort of social media and your own personal brand is to have that LinkedIn profile up to date and professional.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about making sure that your CV and your LinkedIn marries up, which might be quite difficult if you're tweaking your CV all the time.
Yeah, no, but you'll see even just things like gaps in CVs, or quite often even just the jobs people have had in CV don't mirror with the jobs that they put on LinkedIn for whatever reason. And ask a bit of questions about why that might be. And then just having things like further keywords to support on LinkedIn around what your skills are. So it might be project management, it might be operations. If someone's going to do a search via LinkedIn, they're going to put those keywords in, and if they're not in your profile anywhere, you just put the name of your company and perhaps your title, and it doesn't cover what you actually can do, then they're less likely to find you. So it's important to just think about the words that you have within that.
Okay. And I'm guessing those keywords are still important in a CV in case it gets filtered by AI. Yeah.
It is, unfortunately, more and more so. Having those keywords so people can do the CV parsing and can find you. Some systems struggle with PDFs, for example, to extract the words from that, and certainly if you've got PDFs with lovely images and logos of previous companies and looks great on paper, but when you send it to recruitment companies, quite often the AI and the technology can't extract all of that, and a simple Word document is quite often the best if you're going to apply in that way. Nice if you're meeting the individual and giving the CV, to have it all glossy and looking, really, really impressive in terms of the brands, etc. But less so if you're just applying online, because it may not be able to use the AI to extract it.
Yeah, and let's face it, most people are applying online right at the moment, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I would always recommend just a straightforward, simple Word document, no tables, no images, just the words. That's the ones that will be extracted through the technology.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know. Anything else CV-wise that might be interesting for people?
It's always interesting when you ask 10 recruiters, you'll get 10 different answers about CVs. So it's always difficult to know who's right and who's wrong. All I can say is I kind of, years of sitting in interviews and presenting shortlists to clients, my tips and thoughts are based on what clients seem to like and what stands out from them. So everyone sort of understands sort of the basics of a CV, but for me, things like you mentioned those keywords. So maybe your opening positioning statement about your background, that's where you put your keywords in, such as logistics, modeling, pay-per-click. If you're doing marketing, that might be that you're an expert in those areas right up front. That might be quite useful to get the keywords in. Then it's always surprising how how often people don't put any information about the companies that they work for. They'll just put the name of the company and almost assume that the reader knows who that company is. And I think that can prove challenging for some clients of ours to understand, well, what is the business? What's the size? What sector is it in? What locations are they working in? Helps them to understand, right, that's similar to our organisation, or there's a similar skill set from that organisation, and see how it might be relevant or potential transferable skills within that. It only has to be one line. It's a global digital marketing company with offices in 3 or 4 locations with 350 people. And customers include A, B, and C. Just 1 or 2 lines really helps, I think.
Yeah.
Reverse chronological order, the most recent experience at the top of the CV, and then I believe the last 2 or 3 roles should be the ones that you really go into in depth and detailed, so that they're the most recent, most relevant experience. You can be slightly less expansive the further you go back in your career. Often I see achievements as a separate section, and again, I don't, from experience, think clients like that as much as they do from being able to see it within the individual roles that you've had. They want to read what you did, what you achieved, and the CVs that really stand out, and I think this is the bit that many people miss, is what were the tangible benefits of those achievements? How did you measure them? So what was the number of millions of pounds saved, or what was the percentage reduction in process time over, or how much percentage over your sales target were you? I think it just shows that not only have you done something, you've achieved something, but you're able to measure it, and therefore the impact you made to the organisation. And it's a simple little thing, and sometimes it can't always be shared if it's confidential information, but those that are able to add a few percentages, pounds of saved, etc., are the ones that really add up. And then the last thing is almost look at every line and put yourself in the reader's shoes. Read the line and ask yourself, so what? What have you put something in that's going to make you stand out? The reader's going to go, oh, that's interesting, or that's useful, or that's added value. Far too often I see CVs where the experience in one job is just mirrored in the next job, and it's just the same lines, the same words. That's not adding anything. You're just repeating yourself. So look at every single line. It's important, and ensuring that it's adding value to you and really demonstrating what you would bring to the new client.
Yeah. If anything, it'll be an easier read as well. Yeah. So you mentioned that you always follow up if somebody refers you to somebody else. So obviously that's we've talked about CVs. Let's talk about networking, because that's a vital part at the moment of finding a job. And any sort of tips and ideas on the networking side? What should people be doing?
Well, the first thing I always like to say is that a lot of people start networking when they haven't got a job, and by then it's probably a little bit too late. I think that the people that are very good at networking and using that network to secure themselves roles are ones that are always networking and are always building that network, and not just trying to tap into it when they're out of work. So I think it's something that we can all benefit from doing all the time, building your network, whether it's on social media, LinkedIn, or in person, groups, whatever. That networking is a strong tool for future career searching. So build it now and build it wide is what I would say. It's in a downturn, in a difficult market, which we've already talked about, how there might be 500 applicants for a role. How do you stand out? Well, if you can use your network to get you introduced to the recruiter or to the hiring manager of the particular company, then you're definitely going to stand out, because you're getting direct access. It also helps you find prospects that aren't with the recruiters. And again, this sort of downturn market, it's a challenging recruitment market. Companies have made people redundant. They're not quite sure quite often what they need. So they may have made 3 people redundant, and they know that they still need some tasks done, but they don't know how to put it together into a package, and therefore don't know how to send it out to market, even to advertise it themselves or to a recruiter, but they just know they've got a problem. Well, if your network can say, oh, I know someone who can do two of those things, you go and speak to Beverly. She's been in a similar role, and she could bring those skills across. You may find that network creates opportunities for you that didn't exist otherwise. And so it's very much a case of building a network. I believe is a mix of hard and soft skills. You need to do it continuously. Work out who you want to network with. You can look at the people that you may have worked with in the past employees, past employers, the non-execs of those companies, people that you might be in your charities. Target who you're going to network with, and then it's the soft skills to do that in a friendly manner that people say, okay, yeah, this person is interesting, I want to be part of their network. And if you do that, if you give back, I think is the key. If you're always helping other people, then you'll build long-standing reciprocity. People want to help you.
Yeah, no, I agree. You mentioned the challenging job market, and 500 people going for positions and so on. So, for some people it is going to be a bit of a slog out there. What's your advice on, staying sane, staying optimistic?
The first thing I would say is that you're not alone. Don't think it's just you. It's just you that's not being able to find the job, or it's you that's not getting responses. It's a challenging time. So a lot of people are in the same boat. And like any of these things, the more you can talk about it with your friends, family, a coach, a mentor, anybody that's supportive, the better. That it's important to keep that sort of mental and physical well-being at front of mind when you haven't got maybe the structure and routine that you'd normally have when you're fully employed. And what you don't want to be doing is sitting at a computer for 12 hours a day, just sending out thousands of applications, not getting many responses, waiting for someone to reply. So it will become very draining very quickly. And certainly for the management, executive level roles, it's not unusual for people to be 3, 6, even 12 months between roles. And that's a long time. So you have to sort of think about your whole wellness and your whole well-being, and not just the practical side of trying to find a role. And part of that, I guess, that well-being is almost reflecting on what's important to you. So do you want to continue to climb the corporate ladder, or are you looking now for more of a work-life balance? Your options to perhaps climb the career ladder may be limited at the moment anyway. So maybe you look at some other role or a different type of position or a different type of company just for the next couple of years, and then you climb back on the ladder. It's just really just reassessing what's important to you and just making sure you make some time for yourself and not just continually trying to look for a job. So keep physically fit, build some time into your day to do some exercise, healthy body, healthy mind. Think about your networking. Think about what other things you can do in your day that's not going to mean that you're just constantly thinking about where you're finding your next job. Easier said than done, but I think it's an important thing to try and factor in.
Yeah, I think the whole thing about networking, it's not just about you getting a job, is it? If you're sat at home, the networking is social, it's stopping you feeling isolated. It's, talking about things that are going on in the world out there. So it's very important.
It's giving you an outside world perspective, it's giving you some information which you can use perhaps in your interviews, what's going on that you can reflect back when you're speaking to people. And it may just be, you say something to someone and it just resonates with them. And when they're in the office and someone says they need this project done, they'll come back to you. And it may be 3 weeks or 3 months later. But if you've had that conversation, you've said it in a professional, sort of inquisitive way, and you're remembered, and you're known to be helping other people, then hopefully it will come back to you and will serve you well.
Yeah. So finally, you've got the job. Should you keep in touch with your recruiter? Is that a good idea?
I believe so. I think almost back to what your first question. How do you get noticed by a recruiter? They will go with people that they know, that they've worked with, that have stayed in touch with you. So I think it's a good thing to do. and relatively simple to do with technology, things like LinkedIn. If your recruiter is posting a job or has posted a survey, and comment on it or like it, or if they're looking for names, recommend names. All those things get remembered. You remember the people that try to help you, and they're in front of your mind. And when you do have another job, you go, oh yeah, I saw their post last week. That reminds me, they may be worth speaking to, even to network, or even potentially as a candidate for another role. So I think it's important. There's a balance between being too needy and being in touch all the time, but I think it's a useful exercise to do, particularly for the sort of management executive level, is build that kind of professional relationship between you and your sort of trusted advisor recruiter, and I think it helps build your network.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So lots of good advice there today. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think it's a different market when there's a downturn and you've got COVID-19 challenges and people working from home. You know, that whole networking piece is so much harder now than it is if you were at events and conferences. It's very much about apportioning your day and not just being a slave to the computer. Get out, get some exercise, walk and talk, do some calls when you're out in the walk around the park, and you know, there will be lots of applications, I'm sure, and lots of rejections and lots of no responses at all. Unfortunately, it's just the market it is that we have at the moment. So try and make the most of your network.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's really useful. So thank you. So all Luke's contact details will be below the video, so please feel free to get in touch with him. But yeah, just to say thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us today. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Paula.